When cash flow runs out, it's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's the slow suffocation of your business. One bad month can turn into a survival fight you never saw coming. I've been through long, brutal cash flow droughts, and I want to share with you what it's really like to be in the middle of one. We're going to talk about spotting the early warning signs, avoiding the bad decisions panic can cause, and building a cash flow safety net. Tonight, I've got with me a very special guest. I'm using ChatGPT to interview me. So it's going to be interesting. She's prepared a number of very, very tough questions. And just for your interest's sake, I didn't prepare any of those questions. ChatGPT decided completely on what to ask me. So this will be very interesting. If you like my videos, if you find them interesting and helpful, please subscribe to my channel and like this video. Share in the comments anything you find interesting, your own experiences, and share the video. It really does help other entrepreneurs like yourself to find the content, and it also helps me keep the channel afloat.
So let's dive right in and kick off with that first question whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. Let's go for it.
All right, let's do this. So, the first question to kick us off: cash flow issues rarely appear overnight. In your experience, what's the earliest signal you've learned to watch for, and how did you discover it?
Yes. So if you're in early business, cash flow is always going to be an issue. But as you progress, you will start to learn the patterns of your industry, and you will begin to notice the decline in your revenue. In our case, uh, we saw the signs because it was actually quite clear. Um, one of my business, let's call it business associates, came to me with a tender document, and very soon became apparent to me that we'll be tendering for the business that we already have, and with a very big possibility of actually losing it to somebody else. Um, so you'll know in your industry what things look like, and sometimes it can be difficult to see what the issues are. But if you start noticing uh, a monthly trend of a decline, you'll see you might be losing customers, or your new sales might be going down. Um, then that might already be an early sign of an impending cash flow issue. Or if, of course, your suppliers suddenly increase their expenses, I mean their costs, then if you don't do something to adjust your own pricing, then you're obviously at some point going to run into some sort of cash flow issue. So you do need to keep a keen eye on your business finances, because if you don't, you might miss it. And the signs are in the books. You need to keep it. Now, actually, I've who was it? I think one of my business coaches. I can't remember exactly. It always told us that you need to protect your margins, and I've lived by that for the longest time. You can't do things like give people major discounts left, right, and center, and you need to make sure that your price is always in a place where uh, your gross and your net profit margins never shrink. They should rather grow, or at least remain the same, because what happens is, if the supplier increases their prices, or the price on a product increases, if your GP on that product was 24%. After the price increase, it will still be 24%. Um, but the amount of money that you'll be making off that product will be more because that actually grows with the cost of the product. Um, so protecting your margins is an absolutely important thing that you need to always do.
That's a great insight. And it really sets the stage for anyone watching to understand that those early signals are often right there in the margins and the monthly trends. So let's keep rolling with that momentum. Here's the next question. When cash dries up, it's not just a spreadsheet problem, it really hits you personally. What does that pressure feel like? And how did you handle it?
Well, in the beginning, I was like, "Well, we'll get through this," and the most important thing that I've always said was because remember the cash flow issue that we had was sort of a planned cash flow deficit. We ran into a situation where some tough decisions had to be made, and I knew that we were going to be in a cash flow problem. And so I knew it. I was kind of mentally prepared for it, but it only really became a problem later when we implemented the new agreements with new suppliers and the new infrastructure. And we got to a point where we could actually not pay our suppliers, and it was always an issue, but it was never really an issue because this one particular supplier, the one that we haven't paid on a regular basis back then, they didn't do anything until maybe a year, year and a half, 2 years down the line, where we really started to owe them quite a sum of money. And that's when uh, I can't even describe to you what emotions you feel, because it's all of them. Um, you're angry because you're in this situation, because we had to make tough decisions and that got us into that position, and this very supplier was actually responsible for the position that we were in because we had to compete with them and now we had to join forces with them, but that reduced our GP dramatically. And we also had to build infrastructure that we weren't prepared for. So it was a compounded effect of a lot of things that went on. So you feel all this mixed set of emotions. I mean, you're stressed beyond comprehension, and it got worse progressively as time went on. And at a point, they really started threatening us that they're going to discontinue our account. And at that point, we had nearly, I don't know, 220, 230 customers on their network. So can you imagine the supplier switching off 230 customers? I can barely pay these guys. What about, in fact, I couldn't pay them. What about all of my other suppliers? So now one supplier is threatening to switch off services, then I can't pay other suppliers. The whole business will eventually just it will cease to exist. Um, so that was really terrible, and um, every time you get a letter from a supplier, a letter of demand saying you need to pay by this afternoon 4 o'clock, it's like your whole world comes to an end. You're paralyzed with fear. All the feeling goes out of your face. You feel numb. I can't even describe it. It's the worst feeling in the world, and it's really something that I never want to experience again. It was it was a good it was a good experience, not in the sense that I enjoyed it, but in the sense that I will be very careful in future when I make business decisions so that I don't get myself into that situation again. It was a calculated risk. I've always said that we if we don't do or don't make the decision that we made, the business would cease to exist. But by making the decision, we still had a chance and a real possibility of growing the business. Um, which we wouldn't have had otherwise. So it was worth it in the end. The business has gone from when we started 1.2 million rand a year turnover to just over 6 million rand in a space of, it was about 3 to 4 years. So it really was worth it. We've had the growth, but the growth means nothing if you don't have the profit, but the potential is there. And for me, it was about the potential, getting the business to that point where it can really become a money making machine in terms of, serving customers in volumes. We're an internet service provider. We absolutely in a position to service literally thousands of customers every month.
That's a powerful story, and it really paints the picture of how emotionally intense those moments are. It's a great reminder that even calculated risks come with a huge emotional cost, and those demands from suppliers can really push you to the edge. All right, let's shift gears to the next question. When money's tight, a lot of entrepreneurs make panic moves that actually hurt them more in the long run. What's one damaging panic move you've seen, or maybe even made yourself when cash was running low?
Yeah, so um, I think some entrepreneurs will they will stop their marketing endeavors. That's usually the first thing to go, and it's not the best thing to do. It's in fact it's not a good thing at all because marketing grows your business, and if you're in a cash flow situation, you have to add new customers. You have to promote the business because the best way, yes, you can cut costs. That will go a part of the way in resolving the issue, but you have to grow the business. You have to earn more money to outgrow the deficits and the cash flow constraints that you have. If you don't do that, it's just really, really stupid. So, um, I've seen people cut their marketing budgets. I've done that on a couple of occasions, but we were in really, really dire straits. To give you an idea, uh, some months we were short like 80 to 100,000 rand, and it's like s- you'd get to a point where you think to yourself, you know, I've got all these bills to pay and I'm shorting 100,000 rand. That's one supplier invoice. It's ridiculous. So there was a time where I said, you know what, I'm not going to be able to pay these guys, so let's just run with the marketing budget. um, and then when it got closer to the end of this whole ordeal, we were getting to a point that we could make a plan and settle these guys and get them off our backs, get an investor. Um, then things got really tight because now we're sort of taking away the, if I can put it in brackets, flexibility that we had. And now we had to start getting ourselves in a position where we can actually pay all of the bills. And that's where we took like salary cuts, 50% down on mine, 50% down on my sales guy. In fact, I had to re-employ my sales guy as a technical guy, which he wasn't really skilled for, but I had to work around that, and he said, "Well, I'll just go on with sales anyway." Um, but yeah, I mean, that's a very difficult thing to do. Um, yeah, just don't don't cut on your essential things, the lifeblood on the business, because we when the business is struggling, we often want to just go and cut all the expenses. And it's important to get rid of the unnecessary expenses. It's important to review our expenses and see if we can get a better deal elsewhere. Is there another way that we can structure a particular supplier or a particular set of business, I want to say entities, or so that you can save and consolidate things. And there's a lot that you can do to reduce your costs. Um, but then also, once you've cut your own salary, which is never the ideal, but in some cases you have to do it, you need to be responsible. Um, you run into a situation, and this has happened to me like for the last year, um, where you don't have enough money. You cut your salary to the point where you think, okay, this is going to help the business cash flow, but then your personal life, you can't pay your own bills, and then you have to take money from the business anyway. So it actually doesn't make a lot of sense to reduce your own salary, especially if you're in a situation where, like myself, we've got a lot of debt that originated from the business. So you can't really reduce those expenses. Um, and then, you reduce your own income to almost the point where you're only taking the money to cover the debt repayments. Um, and then you can't eat. And, you know, just take the salary, because you're going to take the money in anyway. And if you're in with investors, they're going to eventually at some point review the bank statements and see, oh, but there's a little, there's a little. And there were months where my personal expenses, I it's very, very complicated with all the debt and all the um, uh, we've got a place that we're renting out. All of those expenses. I've looked at our expenses one month and what I required from the business, and then you've got this emergency, and I just couldn't understand. With two people, and the amount of money we were spending was insane. And then you try and you get rid of those expenses, and you just can't because they're fixed. Because you've got this whole other business, the rental property, which also has its own requirements, and it makes it really difficult. So, um, I mean, be very careful when you cut your own salary, because it won't necessarily always have the effect that you want. And when you get into that situation where the business's income becomes your income, because you just need a little bit and you're taking a little bit, then it becomes liquid, and before you know it, you've taken more money than you actually needed, and more money than the business can realistically afford or not afford. And that's a bad thing. It's really bad for the well-being of the business and for your own personal mental well-being.
Absolutely. That's a crucial lesson. Cutting essential things like marketing can feel like a quick fix, but it often just makes the long term cash flow problem worse. And your point about salary cuts hitting a wall really drives home that it's a balancing act. Sometimes the personal and business lines blur more than you like. So let's move on to the next question. Tell me about what are the most creative or unconventional ways you manage to keep your business alive during a cash crunch?
Um, yeah. So I think the whole thing that transpired was very unconventional. Um, because we got into this situation where we had to compete against someone else to keep our own customer base. And at the same time, it created an opportunity, because now we could we had this choice of continue operating the small time network we were operating, or go and build the infrastructure that we need to be able to partner with this other network. and also be able to partner with other networks, which gives us access to a whole national footprint. Um, and the problem that I had at that time was the business was cash flow positive. We had surplus money every month, and I was able to reinvest that into the business, spend it on marketing and all of those. But we weren't very profitable because we were a reseller for another ISP. So the margins were really slim. If it was 10%, that would have been a huge amount. Um, so this presented us with an opportunity to expand the business and add infrastructure, which I was planning to do in any case, but never got to it because the cash flow wasn't quite right. You always need just a little bit more and just a little bit more, but you never get that little bit more. Um, and then uh, the decision that I took to go and build the infrastructure in spite of the business not having money, I think was a very, very risky and um, I don't want to pat myself on the shoulder, but I think it was a risky and a ballsy move that has paid off in the long run, but it has required so many sacrifices from both me and my wife and our staff, um, which I think in the greater scheme of things is worth it. Um, but yeah, it was definitely one of the more unconventional ways of doing it. Is just go and build infrastructure and do stuff without having the money. That's not something a business has to do ever, that's not something a business should do ever. Um, yeah, I think that would pretty much be it.
Absolutely. That's quite a story. It's a testament to the idea that sometimes you have to take those unconventional, bold steps to seize an opportunity, even if it's incredibly risky. It definitely shows the kind of sacrifices that go into making a business successful in the long run. So let's move on to the next question. If you could go back to day one, what would you set up differently to give yourself a stronger cash buffer?
That's a very difficult question. A cash buffer, yeah, it's like I would definitely. So I only later stopped. I'm not a big book reader. I don't know why I've never really liked the act of reading books. Um, but I read some books by Mike Michalowicz, Clockwork, Pumpkin Plan, which was a very insightful book, very good for small entrepreneurial businesses. I don't think it's going to apply that much to large businesses, but go and read those books, Clockwork and Pumpkin Plan, and maybe I think what's it, the toilet paper entrepreneur, something like that, all from Mike McCullowick's. By the way, I'm not endorsed for saying this, or I'm not sponsored for saying this. I'm just from my own experience. I think those are some good books to read if you're a small business owner. Um, so in Pumpkin Plan, it talks about taking certain amounts or cutting off or cutting away certain uh, things in your business that you don't need, because as you go on, you accumulate a bunch of services and products and stuff that's really not adding value. It's just you know costing you time and management. And then it also talks about taking certain amounts of your revenue and putting those into dedicated accounts. Um, not rainy day accounts, but you might be saving for building new infrastructure, or you might have to put away money for bonuses in December. Um, and that's something that I started doing, and it was actually starting to go well. We had some money put away, but only just, before this whole thing happened, and I was no longer able to do it. I mean, how can you put away money if you don't have any money to put away. Um, but I would definitely focus a lot more on putting away money so that you have money available for doing things. It's important for your business to grow and expand, and um, for you to do research and development, and you need to upgrade equipment, buy new equipment, and you can't do that if you don't put away money in to achieve those goals. And you can't do it out of your cash flow, because then this month you're going to have a tough time. So something that comes up that's important, that costs unexpected money, now is not going to be now is going to be a problem, because now you don't have money.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Setting aside those dedicated funds early on, kind of like building those financial buckets for different needs, can really help create that buffer. And even if you start small, it can make a big difference down the line. All right, let's wrap up with the last piece, the outro. You've talked about spotting early warning signs, avoiding panic moves, and building that cash flow safety net. So, in your outro, you might want to sum up with a key takeaway and a call to action for your viewers, and then we'll be all set.
Yeah, so I mean, be responsible. Don't go and cowboy it. If you do what I did, a business that is technically insolvent is illegal to operate. We've gone out um, on the presumption that the business wasn't in decline. We were adding customers, so the issue that we had was not a solvency issue; it was an issue of cash flow, because the business was growing. But if you're in a cash flow situation and uh, your cash flow is declining, you're losing customers for whatever reason, it is actually illegal to continue to operate. You might actually land yourself in jail. Um, so don't do that. Be responsible. Make sure that you understand the situation that you are in, and if you see that the business is in a strong decline, rather go and roll up the business and call it a day, unless you can figure out how to turn the thing around. But also, don't wait too long. You need to be responsible. There's a certain amount of time. You can't go on and say, we'll fix this thing. I just need more time. I just need more time. Um, Unless you're actively fixing it and improving on things, it will be irresponsible to say we're going to fix it if the business is in a decline and not showing any signs of coming back to life.
That's a really powerful note to end on. It's all about responsibility and knowing when to take action. If you're in a genuine decline and not just a temporary cash flow crunch, it's important to be honest with yourself and act responsibly rather than pushing things off indefinitely. So that's a wrap for this episode. Great job sharing all those insights, and I think it'll be really valuable for your viewers. Let's keep that sense of honesty and practicality in the outro. On to the next episode, whenever you're ready.
Thanks for joining, everyone. It was fun to share with you. Um, Tough times I've had, and I look forward to welcoming you back to the next video. Cheers.